Greetings, this is Dr. Timothy Emmerich with Harvest Evangelistic Association. We invite you once again to study a new topic that we're introducing into the criminology psychology section of the YouTube channel as well as the website. And if you want to find out a complete rundown on this topic that we're going to be talking about, which is crime scene reconstruction and analysis, you'll find it on the website. I'll touch on some points, but won't be able to cover all the points on crime scene reconstruction and analysis, and this is why we do the write-up, so you can download them on the from the website, okay? And that's located at harvestevangelisticAssociation.com. harvestevangelisticAssociation.com. And when you get on the website, it would be really appreciated if you could also subscribe to the channel and pass this information on to other people. Okay. When we talk about crime scene analysis and reconstruction, there's a lot of different points that you need to take into consideration. I think that we should look at many different factors, psychologically, sociologically, and criminologically, and in my case also theologically, how things take place. Now, when we look at crime scene reconstruction analysis, we should also consider forensic victimology, the relationship of the victim to the offender. We should also look at criminal profiling and how the event has taken place within the parameters of the crime scene, as well as the role and factors that pertain to the offender. I like to look at also lifespan development and how people go through different phases in their lives and what brings them to a point of committing a crime, a horrendous crime, or any type of crime that I have investigated. I also like to look at the psychosocial analysis, behavioral analysis of people. And you're looking at the psychological and sociological environment in which they grew up in, as well as how this has affected their perception of crime and victims, etc. Okay. Now, there's a lot of points to go over, and I'm going to do this a little bit different because I want to talk about a crime, then we'll go through it little by little. Each crime scene is different, okay? And you can't use a one model to fit all, because, you know, you have different search patterns, collection of evidence, blood splatter, etc. Whatever it may be, it has to be done in a very precise and professional manner, so evidence is not lost or contaminated, which could throw cases out of court. Now, again, this is going to be in the website, these different points, and because crime scene reconstruction develops in a sequence of events, the physical evidence and testimony and reenactments and documentation and collection of methods must be used for all types of evidence. And we must understand also, any time that humans are involved, either with forensics or collecting evidence or interpreting crime scenes, bias is also there, because we are biased. And we can't get around that. Sometimes in my teachings of my classes in criminology and forensic methodology and things like that, I talk about a very important aspect that most seasoned investigators who become hardened and jaded might overlook, and I call it fresh eyes. And fresh eyes is bring in someone that has very little experience in crime scenes and have them go through the crime scene and note and make those notes available to the seniors involved. Senior investigators are involved, so they might pick up on something that they missed, and this happens a lot. This is why fresh eyes from someone that has not been necessarily a seasoned investigator could look at things in a very different way and bring out some new information that has been overlooked. Now, the case that I want to talk about happened several years ago, and it was quite a sad case. I received a call from my unit to respond to a hospital where the mother and father brought in the baby that was not breathing. And the attending physician, looking over and making their examination, stated that this was a case of SIDS. Looking at how the parents were responding and how the doctor made a very preliminary examination of the child, the deceased child, a lot of things caught my eyes. The first thing that caught my eye is that the parents, the father didn't seem very upset. The mother seemed upset. She was crying, but there was no tears. And she was visibly upset, but again, there was no tears. And their I guess, behavior with one another was very off. If a family or parents lose a child, that usually for the moment brings them together, depending on the crime, of course, or depending on what took place. But the mother and father seemed very distant, very reluctant to look at each other. They did not hold hands. They did not embrace. So after a preliminary discussion with them at the hospital, we transported them to the station in which further investigation could take place. Now, before I get into that, I want you to understand is that why they were at the station, which took place a little bit later on, I responded to the home, and they said they had two 7-year-old twin daughters that living there, and they had a caretaker in the meantime. So I responded to the home, and when I went into the house wasn't really in disarray, but it was like a 2-story condo, and a living room, dining room, kitchen, etc. were downstairs, and then there was 2 bedrooms, I recollect, upstairs. And so talking to the children about the situation that took place, they were visibly shaken. They didn't understand everything that was going on. But they stated that mom and dad were having a lot of problems, a lot of arguing, back and forth, and the screaming, and mom crying, and dad angry, etc. And so I went up into the where the incident took place, which was in the mother and father's room, and the bed wasn't made up well. It was quite an array. And so I took some pictures, of the initial scene where the incident took place, the so-called SIDS took place. And then when after I took pictures, other staff came in and did some forensic analysis and things like that. And material was confiscated and placed in paper bags, etc. And then I went about and spoke to some of the neighbors as well as the landlords that rented this condo to the parents. And everybody said that the family in the last 3 months was having, 3 or 4 months were having a lot of problems, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, and they couldn't really understand what took place. But the scuttlebutt that was that they had extreme marital problems due to infidelity. Okay. So, I spent probably, I would say, 6-7 hours at the alleged crime scene and talking to wits and people within the family, etc. and then I proceeded back to the station to speak to Mom and Dad. Well, to my surprise, somewhat surprised, but not really, I started to unravel a lot of information. I took down a lot of history of Mom and Dad, history of the baby, where the baby was born, how old was the baby. There was a baby about 3 months old, and the hospital they would go to, etc. And the hospital they would go to was about 3 miles from their home. Okay, and what was very peculiar of what took place was that instead of going to the hospital where they usually take the baby, they went to the other direction to another hospital that was 11 miles away to take the baby into the emergency. They did not call 911, which I asked why, and they said, well, they didn't think that they would get there in time, so that's why they transported the baby to this other hospital. I asked, why did they go to the hospital 11 miles away rather than 3 miles away? And they really didn't have an answer from that. I said they guess they were very upset and confused, but they had been going to, for the other kids, the 2 7-year-old twins, that had been their hospital, and that's been the clinic they would take them to and the doctors that they would see, etc. And it didn't make any sense that instead of going 3 miles to the closest hospital to their house, they went to the opposite direction, which was 11 miles from their house, and they didn't call 911, and neither one said that they knew how to resuscitate the child. Okay. So listening to them and talking to them, and of course I separated them at one point, and I said to Mom, tell me what was going on. And she said, well, I wanted to take a shower because I was getting ready to go to work because I work nights and Dad would work days. And when I went into the shower, Dad had the baby in the bed. And when I came out of the shower, I found Dad screaming. Dad started screaming and told me that the baby wasn't breathing. So I tried to shake the baby a little bit to get the baby to breathe, and the baby wasn't breathing. So we got dressed real quick, and we rushed the baby to the hospital. So I said, well, why to a hospital 11 miles away rather than 3 miles? She said, I don't know. We just got very shaken and upset, and we just went to the wrong hospital. I said, oh, okay. So I said, have you guys been having any problems? And she said, yeah, we argue a lot back and forth. And I said, what? Well, sometimes finances, sometimes our schedules, things like that. So I said, okay, sit tight, and then I'm going to go speak to Dad. And Dad basically said the same thing. He was laying in the bed, and the baby was fine, and Mom went to go take a shower because she works nights and Dad works days, so they take turns with the kids and things like that. So again, I felt the father very distant, hiding something, Mom hiding something, and they weren't really talking about what was taking place. And again, testimony is very important. Everything was being recorded. I was taking notes, jotting them down. They were Mirandized, of course, and they didn't think anything of it because, the doctor said this was an accident, SIDS. Okay. So when I went back with the mother, this was about maybe 4 hours later that I took with Mom and Dad. And when I went back with Mom, I said, something just doesn't seem right. You guys feel like you're hiding something. The baby is 3 months old, and babies with 3 months old can't turn over per se and suffer from SIDS, suffocation. And she began to get very nervous. And I said, it's very important that you be upfront with me because CPS has responded to the house, other investigators responded to the house, and they're talking to the children and making a preliminary investigation, and they need to make an assessment if the children are going to be taken into custody, what's going on. because things aren't lining up. So Mom became very shaken, very visibly shaken, and she broke down and she said, the baby that I had was not my husband's child. I was having an affair with the manager where I work, and that was a child born from that extramarital affair that I was having at work. And I said, did Dad know? She said, well, after about, I think about a month after the child was born, I told him. He became very upset, very physical, throwing things, yelling things, which scared me, of course, and the baby and the children, and we were very frightened. And I said, so what happened with the baby? And she said, well, the baby turned over. I said, ma'am, the baby at 3 months old is not going to turn over. That is, a baby can't do that at 3 months, okay? And sometimes it doesn't even take place at 4 months. So I said, what was going on? And so she became very physically shaken, and she said that she left the baby with the father on the bed, and she went in to take a shower, and when she came out, there was no screaming, Dad wasn't calling her, whatever, but when she came out, the father advised her that the baby was dead. So I said, how could the baby die if you're in the shower and the father at the bed? And she said, I think that he smothered her, the baby, because he was so angry that the child was not his. I said, okay. So I left her and went back with the dad. And again, I started speaking with the father. And I said, things aren't lining up. Your wife's testimony is very, I guess, disturbing, and I need you to be very upfront with me. And Father said, what do you mean? I said, well, Mom basically is saying that because the child was not yours, and he became very flushed when I said that. And he said, she told you that? I said, yes, she told me that. She said you were very angry, very upset. There was a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting taking place. And, she feels that you killed the baby. And he said, he used some explicitive words and said, I didn't kill the baby, she killed the baby. So, and I said, well, what happened? He said, well, yes, we were arguing. Yes, we were upset. I didn't want the baby there. She still had the baby there. And when she went into the shower, she basically told me, she says, I'm going to the shower and you do whatever you want to do, but I'm not involved. And so I said, does that mean that she knew what you were going to do? And he said, yeah, but she basically did it when she came out of the shower. I didn't do anything. I said, okay. So I went back with the mother and I said, the father's saying that you killed the child, that you smothered the child. And she became very upset, angry, crying. And she said, when I went into the shower, he smothered the baby. I said, did you know he was going to smother the baby? She said, yes, I knew that. And so basically, the father was held, for the homicide of the child, and Mom, of course, for aiding and abetting and whatever other charges we were able to tack onto it, this situation. Very sad, very sad. But again, just because medical doctor says something or someone else says something, whatever, if I wouldn't have done digging about maybe 6 to 7 hours with both of them, and that's not even counting the time that I spent at the house, the initial crime scene, whatever, if I would have not have done that, it might have been just basically resolved as SIDS and left at that, and the child that was murdered would have no justice for it. So the reason why I presented this case as it is, because as I go through these things, we must be very assured of what we're doing and know lifespan development, children, what age they can turn over, what they can't turn over, what a child is basically available to do to themselves, or trouble they can get involved in. A kid is big enough, if a dresser falls on a kid and they're only 3 years old and it's a big heavy dresser, well, can a child of 3 years old really pull a dresser down on top of them? Another case I had. So, we can't make generalizations. And I've seen over the years that a lot of investigators, a lot of very good investigators, very conscientious investigators, but some other investigators made vast generalizations because everybody's being pushed, because you have so many cases piling up, so many cases you're investigating. I probably, being one of the few Spanish-speaking investigators, I had just myself trying to resolve 70, 80 cases per month that I was given. And, a lot were being held over previous months that I was still working on. Yes, we were being pushed for time. And that's what happens a lot in law enforcement, that people are being pushed to resolve things quickly so they can get on to the next case. Well, again, biases, generalization, and things like that. We need to be really aware of who we are, what our biases are, and what would be taking place. Since I'm Spanish speaking, these two people were from Mexico, but the mother used some phrases that were not from Mexico. They're not Mexican, phrases they would use there. And some of the phrases she used were people that were from El Salvador. And, I know that very much so, because when I did my my PhD dissertation, I was looking at post-traumatic stress disorder associated with child abuse in the Salvadorian community, because we were hooking up a lot of women here and taking children away that were very aggressive, very violent. And, upon investigation, they had gone through a terrible civil war and were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of them were beaten and made to work in prostitution, and had a lot of drugs involved and things like that. So I became very aware of that population. Then I went to El Salvador and interviewed 100 people down there, civilians. I didn't look at any combatants, only civilians. And that was one of the few studies way back when that they only had about 3 studies regarding PTSD and civilians. And my study made up, I think it was the 4th study of looking at civilians and PTSD. When you look at PTSD, all they do is really concentrate on combatants. I did not want to concentrate on combatants. I want to concentrate on civilians, not non-combatants. But getting back to it, that she stated that the manager that she had an affair with that lasted for a long time, she said they were probably involved in a sexual relationship for about a year, and he was from El Salvador, and a lot of people that she worked with were from El Salvador, so she picked up a lot of Salvadorian dialect and word pronunciation and things like that. So those are things that you need to be aware of when you're talking to people, especially children. When you're investigating children and they might be talking about some type of abuse going on. Well, how does the child describe? Because a child who is 3 is not going to be using the same vocabulary as a child who's 7. And a child who is 7 is not going to be using the same vocabulary as a child who's 15, 16 years old, regarding how they identify body parts and what they look at and what has taken place. So that's where lifespan development comes in handy. It's unfortunate that when people get into law enforcement, they don't continue with their education. They have a lot of experience, street experience and experience dealing with crime, but very little information in academic. And, the universities that I teach at and have taught at in the past, we talk about faculty practitioners. And since I teach a lot of sociology, psychology, and criminology, a faculty practitioner is a person that has had the academic training, but also the professional experience in the field in which they're teaching. So I do teach a lot on criminology and forensics and things like that, and social psych, because of my academic. I have 2 bachelors, 2 masters, and my PhD in psychology, forensic psychology. And it's very important to understand that just because you're, an investigator or what have you, I would suggest, if you're even looking at, this teaching, that you continue your education, because that's going to open up a lot of information to you that you would not have available unless you had gone through that academic training. Okay, so again, looking at how many people want to blame things on SIDS when it might not be SIDS, like I found out in this case. This was not SIDS. This was a homicide that took place because father found out that the baby was not his, and it was causing a lot of problems in the family. So mom just basically gave in and said, "Okay, take care of the baby, and I'm going to go take a shower." And so there was complicit involvement by the mother as well in this whole situation. And if I would have just accepted the doctor's, initial diagnosis without asking for the medical examiner to do a biopsy, they would have never seen that the child was smothered. And suffocation is very different. Forced suffocation is very different, and has different effects upon the body, the eyes, etc., than SIDS. Okay, SIDS, a child rolls over and can't breathe, can't roll back, and they suffocate. Okay, but when a child is smothered, like in this case with a pillow, there's very definite differences in those 2 types of modes of death. Okay, so as we took pictures of the bed and all that type of information, and the forensics, and trying to do crime scene reconstruction and analysis, in my days, having computer generated models was quite different. I mean, they have that today, but when I was coming up in the department, we didn't have all the access to that. So a lot was done by legwork, footwork, talking to people, trying to find out the real facts. A lot of digging, a lot of interviewing, a lot of scratching your head and trying to find out what really took place. But one thing that is very important, that the evidence used in a crime scene reconstruction must be complete and have a valid chain of custody. Okay, a valid chain of custody. And a lot of crime scene investigation and reconstruction, because the chain of custody was not followed through, things are thrown out of court. And for instance, if mom and dad had not been Mirandized and they would have talked about all this information, well, all that information would not have been allowed in court, because they were not Mirandized. They were not told about their rights. And this is very important, that people understand about their rights. Okay, physical and testimonial evidence from neighbors, even family members, the mother, and I think it was an aunt is involved, as well as the people who rented the apartment to the family, the managers. All this information was taken in consideration, and in court, the things that has been said, and hearsay, and that being allowed and disallowed, etc. A lot of everything, circumstantial evidence, needed to be put together in order to get a conviction of these 2 people. Okay, defending the death of this little one that died. It was not her fault that mother was unfaithful. Obviously, the marital problems that they were having led mom to be unfaithful, and those are part of the things that we're living in, the times we're living in. And we must understand that given the right situations and circumstances, and this is what I tell everybody, all the students that I have in all my different classes on criminology and forensics, I said, don't be too harsh, don't be too quick, don't generalize, take your time, because given the right circumstances and situations, we're all very capable of a lot of different things. And so, we need to understand that these type of things that come down that we're investigating need time. And we need to take a lot of time to find out what is going on. So the bad guys go to jail and the good guys go free. I remember there was a situation also where I was investigating and I went to this one house and I spoke to this one little girl. She was about 8, and they had a neighbor who was about 18, and 17, 18 years old. And he had, she was saying that he was fondling her and penetrating her, etc. And, the guy had, I guess, an alibi. He said, I've never been even in that house. And I guess later on it was found out that he was a babysitter that the mother used when she went to the store and things like that. So he was finally taken into custody for that. But again, unless you start checking around, nosing around, finding out what's going on and things, taking your time in any case evaluation, crime scene evaluation, you might overlook things, and people, because they're stressed for time, overgeneralize. So anything that you take, the integrity and the veracity of any testimony is taken is very important. And look up, what veracity means, the integrity of how people are talking, how they're expressing themselves. Like I did that in the hospital. Mom and Dad were not very truthful. They were being very different, very distant. And given the circumstances, if a mother and father lose a very small child, let's say, as the doctor said, SIDS, they would be reacting a lot different. And their emotional or lack of emotional response to one another and to the situation was very odd. It was not common to what we see in those type of situations. I mean, I've investigated where kids have died from suffocation in cars where the mom went in the store and went shopping and left the kids in a hot car and didn't get back in time, and the kids died in a car, or children die inside swimming pools and things like that. I've investigated at one time in my career narcotics and gang development and things like that, and the end of my career was in child abuse. And so each of these things, coupled with my academic experience, helped me really understand the situations and what is going on, your own biases and things like that. We all have biases, and we can't let our biases get in way. And people will say things that maybe is correct and maybe is not correct. Okay, so there are different categories of crime scenes and evidence to be studied, with every specific techniques that is needed in investigations. Every crime scene is very different. And again, this entire document will be processed and on the website. And evidence found that crime scenes are highly diverse, and knowledge of processing each one and how to recover that information is very important. How to do it. Sometimes there's very little forensic information, but testimonial and getting people to talk and learning how people, helping them to talk. If you're going like a gangbuster, people are gonna, for the most part, just shut down, and they're not going to talk, and you won't have that testimony. And so I've never done that, because I know that you catch more flies with sugar than vinegar. So it's very important that in my investigative techniques, I was very, willing to listen and willing to understand the situation that was going on. And that's how, you're able to resolve a lot of different things. And anything that is found must be linked to information to form different theories regarding what took place. There's a lot of different individual and either group factors and attributes that lead into an investigation. And when you have an overstepping of boundaries and cross-contamination of evidence and not a clear way of going about things, then crime scene reconstruction and analysis is very, very difficult. And a lot of cases fall through the cracks because people are not following all the steps that need to be followed and making sure that evidence is collected and processed and there's a chain of command that takes place. So I just want to tell you that we have several other videos, why people commit crime, violent attachments. It's a very, very good video as well. We have a video also on intended evil, and that goes into psychopathic and sociopathic behavior, and also testimonies of people through restorative justice, because we have the story of Jamil Wilson, a young man that I met serving as a chaplain in the local prison in the area where I reside, and my wife and I go in, and I was a teacher there as well. We're chaplains now, but I was a teacher there, and being to meet him and seeing his life and how he was finally released from custody and the great things that he has done, that will help you see that people can change, and people can, even from very terrible, terrible crimes and situations, things can be turned around. So I hope that you take a look at these other type of things that we have taught on regarding psychological and criminological, as well as theological. We got a lot of different teachings on that as well that tie into deviant behavior, etc. And you would pass them along. Again, this is Dr. Timothy Emmerich from Harvest Evangelistic Association. Please subscribe to the channel, and please send this to someone else so they might also be able to learn about a lot of different topics that are so very important to us, not just in everyday life, but a lot of people that watch these are pursuing careers in psychology and criminology, and of course these are for you as well. And may God richly bless you. If you have any information, any problems, any situations that you need help with, all the information, the contact information is going to be below this video, and be more than happy to speak with you. Have a great evening, and take care. I'll see if I can find a way to turn this off, and have a tremendous time. God bless you.